So how much is the drug trade to blame for this violence? I'm joined by Michael Vigil, the former chief of international operations for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. He spent 13 years working in Mexico. It's worth noting 4 years on the Mexican border, and at one time 3.5 years in Colombia, and you used to go to the soccer matches not too far from Pablo Escobar, huh?
I would sit about 6 feet away from Pablo Escobar at soccer matches. And the violence in Colombia at that time was wholesale, very much like it is in Mexico today.
In fact, I was just seeing a recent UCLA study says the drug war is cutting life expectancy in Mexico. And you and I had a chance to talk about just coming out against the drug trade in Colombia. That was a death sentence. Is that what we're seeing in Mexico as well?
Pretty much. During the past decade, at least 100 mayors throughout Mexico have been killed for opposing the drug trade. That doesn't include other public officials, police officers, military personnel. So the drug traffickers have really taken advantage of the violence, and they are spreading it throughout Mexico from the north to the southern end of the country.
El Chapo's capture got a lot of headlines, but it's worth noting that very few of these homicides in Mexico actually lead to prosecutions. The numbers from 2006 to 2012, one study says it was just 2% of homicides. Why so low?
Well, the fact of the matter is that, there was a one-party rule in Mexico from 1929 to 2000. Now there's a three-party rule, a democracy that happens in Mexico. And as a result of that, there's no tranquility within the drug cartels. And as a result of that, they don't know what corrupt officials to pay. They're battling each other for control of territory. And they have gone after the security forces in Mexico, politicians. And the current administration is not tolerating a lot of the drug cartels. As a result of that, there's a lot of conflict between the cartels and then the cartels against the government.
Michael, is it the same playbook as what you saw, when you were talking about Pablo Escobar? I mean, are a lot of the same things you saw there also similar in Mexico?
Very much so, because in Colombia, they would kill people for just denouncing the drug trade. And the same thing is taking place in Mexico.
Let me ask you this. For somebody who's been there in the trenches, you've spent all that time in Mexico, on the border, in Colombia, there are no easy solutions. But if you were to tack off 3 or 4, what would be the best thing to do in terms of attacking this problem?
Well, the fact of the matter is that in Mexico, they have a kingpin strategy. They go after the heads of the cartels, but it doesn't do any good because the cartel continues to function. They have to go after the infrastructure of those cartels. And what I mean by infrastructure, they have to go after the corrupt government officials that provide protection. They have to go after the bank accounts. They have to go after the properties. And the other thing is that Mexico is starting to do this, is extradite these individuals. Because by extraditing them to the United States, that you remove them from the criminal infrastructure that supports them. That is one of the main reasons that they fear extradition so much. And that is why individuals like Pablo Escobar went to war against the government to preclude them from extraditing them here into the United States.
But clearly, Escobar is one example, El Chapo another. I mean, if you're going to go to the trouble of getting this guy out, and the way that it was so dramatic how El Chapo got out, clearly they have to have something in terms of their brain power or how they run this organization that's key. So when it's publicized that, hey, we took this guy down, you kind of feel like they're sort of winning the war on drugs, and yet you would say not necessarily so.
Well, not necessarily. I'm not going to take all of the effort away from the Mexican government because they have crippled and they have done away with a lot of the major cartels. But the most powerful cartel in Mexico is the Sinaloa cartel, which is headed by Chapo Guzman. The leadership is very strong. They operate in about 6,000 cities here in the United States and in over 40 countries. With the capture of Chapo Guzman, the individual that's going to take over for that cartel is an individual by the name of Ismael Mayo Zambada, and he has never seen the inside of a jail, and he is currently hiding up in the mountainous region in Sinaloa where Chapo Guzman was hiding.
I get the sense from talking to you that you can take somebody out, but there's a vacuum and somebody will fill that vacuum no matter what. So what is the answer?
Well, the answer, again, is they have to go after the infrastructure, they have to clean house, and they have to strengthen their judiciary. At the same time, one of the key problems, in terms of homicides is the corruption within the ranks of the state and municipal police forces, which are usually in the pockets of a lot of these drug dealers. That has been a problem. It's an endemic problem that has existed for decades. And the Mexican military and the federal police refuse to work with state and municipal police forces because of the level of corruption and the fact that they compromise investigations.